Okay. Cool. So we got three of us. Blake had tried to join, though I think he was having issues because I saw his video kept pausing. So he might just have some kind of connection issues. So I'm sure he'll probably pop on at some point again.
Yeah, he said he's going to skip this one and try joining.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So to the agenda, we have two items added. I actually thought of that a while ago, and actually I like how we put the added by blah. That way, especially when someone says, especially if that person's not here, it makes it easier to identify, like, all right, let's switch over to Rand for, you know, on that topic, on that agenda item. So that's cool. I know I didn't necessarily put stuff. I did have I guess, kind of a couple, and I know James popped in with his, which I know he messaged at some point, which is neat. So from our discussion from the last hangout, he did apparently get the Express.js org to allow private repos. And because of the new plan changes, I assume we're on the new plan, which just means unlimited private repos and whatever. The only thing, we're not actually going to use those for actual code and stuff. I don't see why that would really be necessary, but I did go ahead and make a real quick, when he did that, I made a repo called security in there, which is basically like discussions, but for security. It wouldn't really have any code, just a good central place for us to put that down. So I just made that the other day when I realized we had private now. I think on like Monday or something maybe. So cool. We'll be able to carry that forward here. What we'll do is probably let's just start with Rand, since he has two agenda items listed right now. We'll go ahead and start with you, Rand.
Sure. Yeah. So based on the last meeting, I added a contributing section to the website that I basically just copied a couple of the documents from the Express repo, the community contributing guide and the collaborators guide, and the security policies and procedures. And so that stuff is all up on the website. The content is just exactly the same as is in the repo, but it just makes it maybe a little more visible. And I put the link in the Hangout chat if you guys haven't seen it already, which you probably have. But
yep.
So I just didn't know, that was just more or less a straight copy of what's in the repo. I didn't know if there was anything else that anybody wanted there, or we could, conceivably we could put a link to where the meeting notes are, the issues in the discussions repo, which is basically where we've been putting them, or the on-air recordings of the meetings. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the page is good. Yeah, I looked at it when the pull request came across, and I didn't have a chance to look at it fully published, so I had done that while you were talking, and it looks pretty great. In fact, what I am especially hoping forward here is especially because like GitHub has a thing of like putting contributing.md in the root of your repo, and it shows it up on there and people know where to get to it. So what I'm hoping too is, like, now that we have like this contributing page on the website, we could probably come up with a little template for that contributing file that's just basically pretty thin, because I've seen on other projects, and basically give like some major links, like the one to this page, and then we can go ahead and smash, then that would be easy to put across the repos real quick, and that way because typically when we make a change to the contribution, it applies everywhere, but this way we don't have to go through and like commit to every single one by one. And then worse, not just that, because I mean, sure, it's tedious, but it's doable. The most annoying part is then when we forget to do one of them.
Right.
So that way, that's what I was hoping with this. So that's cool. So I think that this is the main thing I wanted. Sure, we can put up, information about like information about governance and other stuff like that. But whatever. I'm not really, that's just really a cool thing. The contributing, which is this page, is actually the one,
Yeah.
the big one I wanted, which is awesome. So cool. We'll probably also at some point too, and I'll probably make a PR or something to that effect. But because then what we'll do is we'll probably just take the contributing.md that's actually in Express and probably get it so that is also the thin one once we put the thin ones around. So that becomes like the website one becomes like the canonical one to use. So that'll be cool because I've seen many other projects do that.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool, excellent. All right, well, we'll just if we decide we want to add anything else there, we can do that. And there's not the security policy. Obviously, it was written up, policies and procedures were written up before we had the private repo. And I don't know, we probably don't even need to actually say anything about the private just security discussions repo or whatever it is, since that's not going to be visible to anyone. But
yeah, what we'll do is we'll have to figure that out. I know that Node has them because I've seen links to them sometimes in public places. And of course, you click on it, it says 404. What I suspect that we'll probably just use it for is probably like if we get a report about something somewhere or whatever, basically, like probably like one or a few of us are in contact with someone, probably like we'll probably just make it, or even if we find one ourselves, like we'll probably make an issue on there, put all the information and we can discuss it. And there's where we would do our planning for like, when will it be released, right? When do we announce it, right? Like, for example, because we have the security page where we list the stuff on the website. So we'll probably, use that as as a easy coordination ground kind of thing. And it's nice because we can link to that. And then I think if we link to, say, a public ticket, if one of us who has access to the security repo go to the public ticket, we'll actually see the link back to it, but it's not visible if you don't. So it's actually should be able to provide some good links. We can use, GitHub, the checkboxes, so it tells you how many tasks are done or not.
Yeah,
so should be a good way to keep track of, getting that out the door kind of thing. So that'll be cool.
All right.
But yeah, the idea is just basically have a good place to have an easy place for us all to talk about rather than just some random email chains or whatever, which a lot doesn't always work out because people get added or removed or whatever by accident and stuff. So basically a way we can also reference these back in history too if we need to figure something out if we need to. But a good central place for us to discuss it before it's public, which gives us time to get it released. And what we're probably going to do, and I need to make the issue one. I haven't made the issue yet since I made the repo, but typically what I have done in the past with the releases is especially with this kind of one, which this one's actually kind of minor anyways, but since it's not publicly disclosed that I'm aware of yet, and the person who found it has not publicly disclosed it anywhere, usually we end up releasing. I would usually, I'm going to make a thing to chat about this in there, but just to give you an overview, is usually I would release Express first with changes just sounding like normal things, right? Like describing basically what the fix was, but in a literal sense. Then that gives time for people. Then that gives us time to then update the website and stuff after the fact, rather than before the fact, and also gives people, people are most likely going to just a lot of people will upgrade right away anyways. So it already gets people to move. And plus it's nice to announce stuff when it's like, usually like a Tuesday or something. So that gives people, definitely annoying on Friday, especially if it's something serious. There was a couple ones that would affect everybody in the past, but the nice thing about this one is it's very specific and there's workarounds too. So I was thinking too about when we announce this, like how can we announce, like where can we announce also like here's a workaround, you could add this to your code that would work around the issue. until you have time to upgrade. So we should probably also figure out in this, where we can put that, and that doesn't have to be a private discussion either. So my thought is probably we could have it like on we could probably just put them on the security page or something, like, so for maybe like each bullet point or something for security update says like this one has a workaround, and you could work around it by, say, taking this piece of code here and putting it as a middleware in your Express at this, above something, and that would prevent, whatever occurring or something. So, or that if you configure it, or maybe like, I don't know, but I'm sure there are workarounds and mitigations. So probably security page to probably make sense to put that stuff on too.
Sure.
I know that it helps people who are multiple versions behind, is usually the target audience. So someone, say like if the release is in like 4.13.5 or 4.14 or something, right? And they're like on 4.9.0 for some reason, ignoring if there's any actual security issues between them. I haven't looked, but just as a pretend here. And then, of course, it releases there. They're going to have to upgrade past minor versions. Now, they shouldn't have any problems at all, but, some people are, a lot of people want to audit the source changes. Some organizations actually, I've seen actually have the approved versions in private repos that they can pull from. So to get like a new one added to there, they have to go through some process usually. Sometimes the process doesn't actually do anything. Just the fact that they have to go through it is a hoop. So yeah, that'll be cool.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah, and we can definitely add, like you said, after the fact, add the information to the security updates page,
Yeah, and if you have any good, because I know you've done a lot of documentation too, so if you have any, that's why I especially want to talk about like where to put this stuff with you too, because you might have good like past experience with people putting that kind of stuff somewhere too. So
yeah, I mean we have the security updates page. That's really the only place we have for it right now. We do have a way to put an announcement on the website that would sort of pop up a little box. We haven't really used it very much, but if we want to highlight something like that, we could do that and link out to the security updates page. So
yep. Yeah, and typically we always try to get a lot of them, like for example this one. The security issue isn't in the code that's in the Express repo. Right. So, I mean, that's typical for having like a large code base. So it's in a dependency, some dependency somewhere in the chain. So typically, I always try to get the person who reported, or just myself will get whatever that dependency is and whatever their version range added to the NSP, the Node Security Project.
Yeah,
which is really nice because then people can use the NSP command line to figure out if they're affected or not.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
And I think NSP will helps us or that person like submit a CVE, so that way we'll get those kind of links and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But yeah, so that'll be cool. Let's see. I know you had one other thing.
The other one is there's an open issue, or an issue that I opened for putting the website content under the Creative Commons share alike license. That's something again that we discussed last week, and James had just said to open this issue and see if anybody had any comments on it, and no one's commented on it. So I guess at this point, unless there's any any discussion, we should just go ahead and and do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to think because I'm not like a lawyer or anything or whatever, so I don't really understand all the things. As far as I know, it probably should. I mean, a lot of the things people contributed were typos and things like that. So
Yeah.
That's kind of annoying. You know, a lot of it was completely like redone by Strong Loop back in the day. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, it was by me, to be specific.
right, I know, but it was as far as I know, it was like they hired you to
Yes,
do that work, so it was a work for hire and then
that's
owned
correct.
by them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no,
But
it wasn't done by me personally. You're right. No, I just meant that
right,
I did it. But anyway, yeah,
I mean, I would almost say I would almost say the act. I could almost see like the argument of the act of moving the repo, you know, and saying like yes, the website goes there is basically, you know, should be good enough.
yeah.
Um, so.
Uh,
Yeah, I think Michael or something would have to tell us otherwise, but I mean, we could certainly do it and then figure it out later if it really is an issue. I mean, hopefully by the time someone really cares, we're probably going to have already like rewritten a lot of it anyways.
yeah, yeah.
So
I can't imagine anyone. I mean, certainly, Strong Loop or IBM is not going to have any objection there because it's just like you said that they would. That was the whole idea behind putting it, moving it into the Express.js org in the first place, and there's no commercial interest in keeping keeping the content, uh, you know, uh, under a license or some commercial license. That's not that's not a business model that Strong Loop or IBM is interested in. So
right,
yeah, anyway, I'm certainly not a lawyer either. I mean, I think maybe I did CC the Express TC and just to see if anybody had any input, but I mean, James seemed to, he has a lot more experience specifically in his. I think he, more or less was said, open the issue, say we intend to do this, and if anybody had, it's been open for almost 2 weeks now.
right,
There's plenty of chances for people to comment on it. So, I mean, the next step would be to actually just open a PR where, I just add the license file to the repo, and then, I think, like you said, if someone wants to come back and object after the fact, then that's another thing that we can cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess. But
yep,
I don't know. I mean, I've worked on projects before that had documentation under that license, and it's fairly common, especially for open source projects, to say, yep, the docs are just Creative Commons share alike, which basically means you can take the content, you can do whatever you want to it. You can even make a commercial product out of it if you want to, but you have to give us, what do you call it? Credit. You have to say this is where it came from. That's all.
yep, which is pretty much like similar to like what the MIT license says, which is basically just you can use it and do whatever. You just got to keep the original copyright intact, and it pretty much means as long as there's significant actual content left. Because if you end up remixing it so much where it's not really there, I mean, at that point you can probably drop it anyways. So who knows?
Yeah.
These days, But yep. So I think the biggest question that a couple people had were just to figure out because I know some people, it's usually they're just putting excerpts from it in like a book or something. So hopefully this should help people, like when they're trying to do that. It should actually make them they should feel more comfortable doing it, hopefully, which will help just in general.
Yeah.
So cool.
Definitely.
What I also figure we could probably do too is we could probably say at this point too, like CCSA, if that's what we're going for the website, we could probably say like in all these different repos, like any ones that have like, especially ones that have significant README content, should probably just all be under the README would be under that too.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Because I mean, technically, I looked into this a while ago, and it's like, because technically the MIT is only really for code, not necessarily for like words, and you technically need another one like CC or something. So it's kind of stupid. for small things. But I think some of the repos have a significantly large README just because they have a large thing. Plus, it usually doesn't matter that much for APIs usually because the documentation is usually pretty dry. So it's not like there's much copyrightable material in there anyways.
Right.
The website has like a little bit that could be said more to be on that. So that's why it was more like just to have something.
Yeah.
So cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any problems with it. I think we should just go forward and just, like you said, make a pull request, and then we'll probably just merge it in. And, if anybody ever says anything later, we can always revisit it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I'll do that, and I'll just I'll mention the TC in the pull request, so in case anybody has any other final comments or something, they can chime in. But it should be fairly straightforward, and yeah. I think then I can. There's been one pull request. Oh, actually, this is kind of more about the other stuff. But here, I'll put the link in the chat. It's a PR I think that you opened quite a while ago, Doug. 5 or 6 months ago.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. I did see your comment on there. Yeah, we can close. I'll close that here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just kind of going. I'm like, well, just kind of. I like to keep the repo clean, as much as possible. Keep the issues, down and all that kind of stuff. So, and the PRs closed out if I can. So, all right, cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I had. And I should just mention I'm going to be on vacation for probably certainly for the next TC meeting and possibly for the next 2.
Okay, cool.
So just so you know.
Yeah. From me, I have been, especially like after this past vacation, kind of ramping up to. So, yeah, I don't know how much I think I wrote it down a little bit last time. So the biggest issue is like to incorporate this security thing, which is pretty minor anyways, but it's in a dependency and stuff like that, and it's not really a patch, so it's kind of lame. So essentially, it would basically really kind of like, without a lot of effort from even like people not in Express, just general community, with convincing someone to release a version of a dependency, it's hard to put it not in 4.14, so essentially not in a minor release. And so I've been trying to roll up these dependencies to get them all in the state where they're all bumps their minor for this 4.14, because typically the minors will live for quite a long time, as you see. So then once we get that, we'll make a 4.14 pull request on the Express repo, just verify that it all makes sense. Once we merge that and release that, then as for Mike goes, like the 4.14 gets merged into the 5x branch, which then incorporates that. That will then allow us to merge like a whole bunch of those PRs, and then we'll probably do another, and then we'll probably have another pull request made, which will be the next alpha 5.0.
Yeah.
So that'll get us all that real quick here, probably within this week, most likely, or this week or / weekend or whatever the timing happens to be for everybody. But that'll be cool. So we'll pump out those 2 guys.
And so that we'll have that security patch or whatever.
Yeah, so that's the plan, is to have it in the 4.14 release, just because it's, like I said, the dependency is like had some like new features and things added between here, and yeah, and I wish it wasn't like that, but the reason why we were behind on some of those dependencies was just the beginning of year craziness kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, we were sadly slightly behind on our dependencies, so I'm just trying to roll all that crap up. Then from here we should be hopefully not get into that situation again. That's why I always like to keep our dependencies updated, because it makes this kind of a thing easier to get into without all this craziness. So cool. But yeah, in fact, I was really like pushing to get that pull request started today, but I still didn't. So I'm gonna be working. That's probably pretty much what I'm gonna be doing all tonight too. Is after this meeting is just pumping through those things. Hopefully, I really want to get that 414 PR started. With the biggest reason it hasn't actually been made yet is because you actually have to have a commit to make it.
Yeah.
And since pretty much the majority of it is really just going to be these dependency updates, there isn't too much to start it on. Now there is I think we have at least one or two actual PRs in the Express repo that are slated to be 414. There is a 414 milestone, so those are all the ones slated for 414. So those will all be in that. And none of them have pending objections or anything either, so they should be simple merges into that 414 branch. Yeah, there's the optimized JSON stringify performance in V8, which I heard was irrelevant as of Node.js 6.0 anyways, but regardless, I think there's still significant people, especially going to be using Node 4 for a long time, so I think there's a significant performance increase to warrant adding it anyways. We have someone just changing double equals to triple equals for whatever. Then the only other thing that I wanted to get rolled up in there, which is one of the reasons why I've been working on these def updates and testing, was because I really want 414 to have, because traditionally in the past, the first minor after a new Node or io.js major officially supported that major. So I really want to get as much testing of everything that I can get done here on Node.js 6.0 to then be able to then say, like, yep, if you want Node.js 6, 414 is your guy. And I know Yappa kind of looked into that one-person thing, which I think he was able to reproduce now. I'm still not 100% convinced it's actually like Express.js, anything Express can do about it. It's hard to know right now. Like, remember that when you compare the raw HTTP server to Express, there's a lot of code running in Express and almost no code running in the HTTP server. So it could very well just be, the traditional thing of Node like literally accepts as many requests as it can without any stopping point, and so it could just be killing itself rather than a memory leak per se. Like, it could just be, increasing the parallel requests till it dies. So that's just something we'll just figure out. Node 4. In fact, it could be that Node 6 is slightly more efficient in certain ways. So now, like, its efficiency is now killing itself with whatever that killing program is.
Right. It could be that, Doug, I'm looking into this issue, and let me find the root cause.
Yep. So, and I'm sure we'll figure that out sometime here. So what we'll do is, also, Yappa, especially once as I'm going through all these things and testing them, I may actually figure out one of them are causing the issue, just their individual tests. If I don't ever figure it out, maybe, and if you figure it out first, that's awesome. So basically for 4.14, we want to probably figure out what this is so we can say it's fixed with 4.14 as well. So we'll figure out if it's something in Express's code or dependency or something and get that guy, yeah. I'm surprised, I'm not super surprised if it is something in one of our dependencies. It's hard to know, because the problem is they actually upgraded like V8 a lot, so it could be something as crazy as V8 changed some way closures are working and it's closing over something. Some code is closing over some variable it never did before, and hanging on to it. It's hard to know at this point, so I'm sure we'll figure it out though.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just so you know, Hage, I will, if I'm working on stuff in parallel with you look into that. If I'm done with my stuff and you're still working on that, I'll probably dig into it a little bit too as well. But hopefully, I look forward to us getting some information about it prior to 4.14. So it's probably like in 4.14, I'm hoping should be probably out sometime this week, or maybe the beginning of next week, depending on how that timing of stuff goes, because it's already midweek.
So are we planning to support Node 6 and 4.14?
Yep, that's what I was saying. So ideally, we want to do that because the tradition is, and I think you might have been offline when I said this, is traditionally what I've done in Express is that the first after a node or io.js comes out with a new major is like whatever the first minor version after that is essentially what we would quote officially support it. And I was also thinking this is also maybe like you might think of this too, Rand, a little bit of how, because so the one person said, well, how do I necessarily know that, right? Besides maybe the Travis CI config, which is certainly a valid thing. So the old times back in Node like 0.4 and stuff and prior and things like that, traditionally you would in the engines you would only specify that like line of nodes. So then like 0.4 would come out and then no one can install anything from npm because it would yell at you and fail because it was like not compatible, which was super annoying.
Yep, I remember that.
So traditionally these days we assume Node is generally stable, so we have traditionally just put the engines to say greater than or equal to whatever the min version is, and just say, well, it should pretty much work anything above it. So the engine, and we don't want to have to go back and play with that, especially when it, say 6.0 comes out and we find that, hey, there was no problem. So that means technically like 4.13 probably works fine, 4.12 probably works fine, etc., like that. And then of course you can't alter past packages. So traditionally we had set greater than or equal. Then we should probably, my point is that we should probably say like somewhere in the website on our README, probably like Express, this version of Express is tested and actively supported against these Node versions, and we'll probably just label them. So that way when 6.0 came out, it would just basically be missing from that list. So which should kind of trigger people to say, oh, it doesn't say 6 yet. And then if they probably pop up and ask, we can tell them, whatever. And then when we actually do support it, traditionally the mark of kind of like support was just me adding it to Travis and at voyeur config. And so this way you probably also like alter that README or something. So that I think might be a good way to indicate it. And we should probably also put in there like and besides these, Express should work on any higher version as well, but there may be unknown issues or something. Basically, like it's not that people can't use it. I think that people should use it, right? That's a good way to get reports, like especially this one. But we should probably also at least, especially because so many people use Express, probably at least have somewhere so when we do say, like, oh, well, we haven't really even tested it on 6, so it's not like a surprise or something, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a valid concern brought up by that person, so I think that we can probably find a way to help with that. So cool. Yeah, because the biggest problem is we have some shims, Some of our dependencies are essentially just compatibility shims, like they'll either bring some Node 4 API down to 0.10, because Express 4 does down to 0.10, or that's typically it's that they implement something that just Node.js doesn't have an API for yet, and most of those stuff have open issues in Node.js even before the merging of io.js. That's how old a lot of those issues are, because TJ made a lot of them and Jonathan made a lot of those issues in the Node repo to say support this API and support this API. And I saw a couple of them got added in Node 5, which is pretty neat. So like getting headers from the response because when you can response.set header, but you can't get the headers back. You have to look at the ._headers secret map. So now there's API to do that, which is nice. So I'm sure that Node will eventually get those APIs. But in the meantime, we're basically assuming things about the Node internals. So typically those are likely to break. And of course, we're not going to have, like, Express's test suite isn't going to be crazy comprehensive, because that'd just be insane to test every single dependencies, every single aspect about it would be probably not very maintainable. So that's usually why I have to run the tests against each one on the new version. So also, sorry I keep talking here, but I'm just trying to dump some stuff, and I'm writing some of this down here too, is that one thing I thought about a while ago, but I haven't really put too much thought in, is like kind of like this, the canary in a gold mine thing that Node.js has, which just runs like a bunch of community modules against, and their test suites against a certain version of Node. I thought about maybe making a repo in like Express.js org or something that would like basically be some code where we could just run it, and it would like basically pull down all of our own modules and just run all their tests against some version of Node. So that would make it a lot easier to quickly say, are there any red flags for, say, this new version of Node or something? Because that would be pretty cool. I haven't really thought about how to put that together. It'd probably just be like git cloning our repos and just npm testing on them or something. So it should be pretty straightforward. We just give it a list of the repos. But cool. Yeah, it's just a thought. I'm sure someone will listen in on this conversation and offer something up. So that's also why I wanted to put it out here in this here too, because I know that that's happened a couple times.
Yeah.
Oh,
I just opened an issue in the doc repo just to remind me to document which versions of Node that we support. So I think that was
cool.
So, go ahead.
Also, one other thing I thought of real quick was, I forget who it was who suggested it, but we had talked about some other meeting, I think two meetings ago, about code style or something, and one person said standard. And so, I mean, I don't have any objections to it. It was similar into because Jonathan liked to not use semicolons, and I always hated that at first. Like, I always wanted to use semicolons, but then because I was collaborating with him, I just decided not to. And then I'm kind of used to it now a little bit. So most of them kind of correspond to the standard format anyways. And I like the philosophy. Of course, there's all kinds of controversy around calling it standard. But I like the philosophy of standard on basically saying there's no tweaks, just use it as it is, so that way you don't have to bite shit about anything. And I think unless someone has some objection to it, I think it was Linus, and I think Multer uses standard already too. So I've been trying to apply standard to some of the JS HTTP repos as I've been updating them, and for the most part, they've all complied with standard except for one of the rules, and I just use ESLint fix on it. So I'm kind of iffy still. So if anybody wants to chime in, I think we should probably just make a new discussion about it specifically in the discussions repo, just to let people chime in somewhere specifically.
I think that's a good idea, because there's always a lot of different opinions about code style. So.
Right. Yeah, the only thing I'm iffy about a little bit is the current main Express repo, which there's a lot of people who go to, and all kinds of new people go to.
Yeah.
Does follow more traditional JavaScript style, as in having semicolons.
Yeah.
So that's really as far as all of Express's dependencies, not many people look at that. If they're looking at that, they probably understand, a lot better. In fact, that's literally my only hesitation about it. It's just for the main Express repo. I could certainly see us getting every so often a pull request adding semicolons everywhere. Hey, you left your semicolons at the door. Here they are. No, thanks.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, and maybe that's just a nonsense worry as well. So, like I said, I'm sure we'll probably have a little I'll put it up. I'll make a specific discussion thread for this guy, just to confirm it. But I like their, I certainly don't agree with every code style, everything rule they picked on there, and no one ever will agree with 100% with everybody's other things. But
Yeah.
I do like their philosophy of stop bike shedding on code style. Just use this. You can't configure everything. There you go.
Yeah.
So, which helps, us code instead of talk about style.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I just got people at work. I got like one team to buy into standard on that premise alone because they would constantly bike shed. One person would switch the editor config from tabs to spaces, and then someone would switch it back again. And yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. Just becomes a kind of a religious argument. People, nothing ever gets resolved. People just argue about it.
Right. It's one of those things that are really bad because typically for almost every single thing that's like tabs for stasis, this for this, you can pretty much say that, it's pretty much a way to say that both are correct.
Yeah.
So it makes it really hard for anybody to ever do anything. Like, in fact, it's like, oh, well, it's correct in these situations and it's bad in these situations. The other side's, well, it's correct in this information, bad in these situations, and both sides can argue themselves to be correct, so it usually gets nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you end up where the only way it gets resolved is someone just like lays their hand down and says, no, it's this way. And basically the philosophy of standard is basically it's the standard people who are doing that laying down the rule. The additional thing I did like about them is like he has this thing where he gets a list of all the repos using standard from NPM. And then when they're debating about even making a major change, he actually runs basically like a canary in the gold mine kind of thing against all the repos using standard to see what repos will fail. So to me, that almost sounds like even better to use that because it seems like they actually, care about, not just constantly changing it, so we have to keep changing the style over and over again. So that's why when I think Linus suggested it, I started looking into it a lot more, and it sounds pretty good. Plus, NPM, they changed their style to standard, so when I was looking at it, someone said that as an argument. I'm like, really? They changed their style to standard? And I looked, and they did, so.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yep. Cool, I'm making that issue right now. So I think that's pretty much all my thoughts here that I spilled out. So I don't have any too much more. It's basically at the hour mark now from when it starts. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. Yapa, did you have anything you wanted to raise?
The only thing I wanted to talk was about the possible memory leak, which we have already discussed.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Well, yeah. So if this 4.14 goes out with the security patch, just make sure to give me a heads up, and I'll keep my eye on the repo too, but so we can add any docs for it next week before I leave. Otherwise, someone else can do it if they want to, but because I'm going to be pretty much gone for about 3 weeks. So.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Yapa.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Have a great evening.
You too.
You
Take care.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.